Hi, good morning. My name is Kike, your host today on the podcast White Reflections by Hadufe. White Reflections by Hadufe is a podcast that delves into the complexities of life and modern day living. As you know, White Reflections is a podcast that talks about life situations, and what we try to do on the show is we try to bring people with real life experiences to share their life situations. Perhaps somebody going through something similar can benefit from it. We also bring in experts on the show to educate us about life situations. Perhaps also somebody going through something similar can benefit from it. On the show today, we shall be unmasking the shadows, and we shall be talking about mental health issues, the common, most pressing mental health issues of our time. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Jubril Abdulmalik. Dr. Jubril Abdulmalik is a consultant psychiatrist, University College Hospital, UCH. He is also an associate professor, College of Medicine, University College Hospital, UCH. Dr. Jubril Abdulmalik runs an NGO called the Asido Foundation. It's an NGO that promotes the emotional and the mental well-being of people generally. He also has a private facility somewhere in Bodija called Anchorage. It's a facility that also promotes wellness, emotional wellness. He runs a column in Tribune newspaper now.
Yes,
He's been running that column for it's
7 years.
for 7 years now, since 2016. And so far, he's been able to put some of his write-ups together into a book. I think I've read that book as well, Optimal Mental Health. So thank you very much. Dr. Jubril is here. Dr. Jubril Abdulmalik, thank you. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Of course, it was a very short notice and you made yourself really available.
It's my pleasure. I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Bringing real life situations to the fore on this podcast and making it very relatable. So well done for the amazing job.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malik. So, Dr. Malik, we've met a couple of times. I know you and I have met and we've discussed a couple of times, and I felt the need to bring you on the show to talk about mental health issues. I mean, considering the fact that it's so worrisome, it's something of a great concern, the rate at which people are, coming down with mental health issues, by the day. And then more worrisome is the fact that, in those days, it used to be adults, but now we have teenagers, even children coming down with mental health issues. We would like you to talk about that, and then, some of the preventive measures that we can take as caregivers, parents, or guardians to, curb this, what do we call it now?
Menace.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. So, first and foremost, in your line of duty,
Right.
I know you've seen a lot of patients. Can you tell us, Dr. Malik, first and foremost, what is mental health?
Right.
And then, secondly, what is the most pressing mental health issue of our time?
Right. Thank you very much. And let me start by saying that before even talking about mental health, let's remember, and very important for our audience to remember, that health itself is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So health is like a stool that sits on 3 legs. So one leg is physical health, which we are all familiar with. The second leg is mental health, and the third leg is social well-being. And so this stool, if one leg is broken, that stool will fall down. But unfortunately, most of us, we exclusively focus our attention on physical health, forgetting that physical health alone is just 1/3 of health as defined by WHO. So you are neglecting 66.6% of health if you are paying attention to only physical health. But when you go to the university, they also go for medicals. They mean physical checkup. Do urine test, do a chest x-ray. If you are joining an organization and they say go for medicals, they mean go for physical checkup. Nobody remembers that mental and social well-being are equally, if not even more important than physical health. So let's remember, before we cone down on mental health, that health generally includes physical as well as mental plus social well-being. Those are the three components of health. Now, if we focus on mental health specifically, the common impression, which is a misconception that people have, is once they hear me, before you even complete mental, they say, weary, aru, yaba, left, and so on. So we tend to wrongly equate anything mental to madness. But that is not correct. Mental health is the totality of your emotional well-being. The totality of your emotional well-being, your functioning, your interpersonal relationships, whether your thinking, your motivation, your drive, your energy, your mood, and all of these functions are functions of our brain. So the same way when we talk about physical health, it may be something as mild as having an ulcer or having a migraine. It could also be something as severe as having cancer. So physical health is a spectrum. Mental health is a spectrum. But specifically, the WHO defines mental health as a state of emotional well-being in which you are able to do 4 things successfully. The first one is the ability to fulfill your unique potentials to the best of your ability. And what this means, to understand this first criteria, is to appreciate that all of us, the billions of people on this planet, we are all different. You may be very gifted in something, I may be very poor at that thing. I may be strong in somewhere else, you may not be strong there. Some people are very outgoing, have many friends. Some other people are more introverted. Some people are very good with mathematics. Some people are horrible at mathematics. So we all have different talents, different potentials. But how do you fulfill your own potentials, my potentials, your potentials, those of the viewers at home? To do so, you must enjoy good mental health. If you are not enjoying good mental health, you'll be punching below your weight. You will not be able to fulfill the full potentials of talents or skills that you have. That's number 1. Number 2 is the ability to cope with the normal stress of day-to-day living. Don't forget, these are not my words, these are WHO words. Say normal stress of day-to-day life. So that means stress in everyday life is normal. Whether you are Dangote, or you are Bill Gates, or you are President Tinubu, or Governor Seyi Makinde, your level of stress is, everybody goes through stress. Whether you are gate man or messenger at the workplace, or you are the chief executive officer, level of stress just differ from person to person. Whether you are a student or you are working, whether you are married or you are single, whether you are a parent or you are still hoping to achieve conception, so we all go through everybody go through stress. So, but he who wears the shoe knows where it is pinching. So in our individual lives, Dangote's stress may be, I want to raise $20 billion to expand to more African countries so that I can make more profit. Another person's stress may be, how do I get 5,000 naira to go to Bodija market and make soup to last me for 1 week? So, but that you will not have stress is mission impossible. In life, everybody has stress. It's just that, how do you cope with the stress in your life? How do I cope with the stress in my life? How do our viewers cope with the stress in their life? When you are not enjoying good mental health, you will be easily overwhelmed. You will struggle to cope with the stress in your life, and that is the problem. So that's number 2, difficulties coping with normal everyday stress. The third one is the ability to work productively. We all have a desire to be useful wherever we are. And if you are not if you are not enjoying good mental health, your productivity will nosedive. You go to the office, you open the system and you're just looking at it. Your mind is not there. Your concentration is not there. And for students, their productivity, their ability to pay attention in class, their ability to do well in their studies will drop. So productivity drops when you are not enjoying good mental health. And the last of the four is your ability to relate well with people, interpersonal relationships. So if you are not enjoying good mental health, you'll be very irritable, cranky, picking quarrels everywhere, at home with family members, at work with colleagues, with neighbors, in the mosque, in the church, everywhere. So for some people, the only red flag you will notice that may hint to the fact that this person may not be enjoying good mental well-being is the fact that they are always fighting.
Doctor, thank you that you touched on that. Very quickly, I want to ask, is extreme hunger, the spirit of hunger, a sign of
absolutely,
mental?
Absolutely. And that's why we have therapies that include anger management therapy. So anger is a natural emotion. When you are upset, it's a natural emotion. However, when it is excessive, uncontrollable rage, some people, when they get angry, they start smashing things, they can get really violent, and afterwards they will regret it. So uncontrollable anger, difficulty managing anger is a mental health problem that requires therapy and interventions. So these are the four roles that characterize good mental health. Fulfill your potentials, cope with the normal stress of life, work productively, and then the ability interpersonal relationships with people. And so if you are not able to fulfill these attributes successfully, you may not be enjoying good mental health. Please note that and let our viewers to pay attention to the fact that we've not said in this WHO definition that if you are roaming the street naked.
So you don't have to wear rags and be on the street.
I may actually be seated here now and having this conversation with you. I may not be enjoying good mental health. I may be depressed. I may be suicidal. I may have problems with drug use.
Very quickly, doctor, I want to ask. Because you've seen people throw the word depression, up like it's really nothing. And I want to ask, what's the difference between deep-seated sadness and depression?
Thank you very much. This is very important because as you say, people bandy words a lot. 3 criteria distinguish what is normal from what is abnormal. So it's important from the outset to appreciate that everybody has fluctuations in mood. We all have good days, bad days, good days. Nobody is happy every day. And nobody should be sad every day. So the difference between normal sadness or deep-seated sadness or being upset over things that are not going well and being clinically depressed, we call it clinical depression. 3 things. Number 1, severity of the symptoms. How severe? So I came here in my car. Just to illustrate, if at the end of this discussion I go out and my car has been stolen, will I do Thanksgiving that my car has been stolen?
Of course not.
Of course I'll be upset. I will have to go to police station, make a police report and so on, go and check, do they have CCTV camera, what happened and so. So I'm going to be upset. I won't be happy. I will really be unhappy. Even if the car is insured and all that, because it's going to take. So severity is a problem if instead of just being upset and complaining and being sad and looking unhappy, if I start undressing and I start rolling on the floor and kicking my feet like a 2-year-old throwing tantrum that my car has been stolen. Doctor, Shujimoto not learn. People that say, this is excessive now. Rolling on the floor and tearing your clothes that your car was stolen. Is it more than a car? So the severity of response is an indicator to life situations, gives you an inkling as to whether this is within normal or this is getting abnormal. So number 1, severity. Number 2 is duration, how long it lasts. So if I'm upset that my car is stolen for some days, a week, that's still understandable. But if I now start crying every day and refusing to eat for weeks, isolate myself, put off my phone and say, because my car was stolen, go like, come on. Your car was stolen, yes, but after a day or two, you should start,
maybe after a week, not a day or two, doctor.
Maybe after a week, true. Maybe after a week, right? But if I cry, refuse to eat, not sleeping for 1 month because my car was stolen, that duration will raise a red flag. The third criteria that becomes a distinguishing factor is ability to function, causing distress. So if I'm so distressed that I work in usage, if I call my HOD and say, sorry, my car was stolen, I need to go to make a police report, I need to go to the courts, and so on, I'll be absent from work for 2-3 days, that's understandable. But if I don't go to work for 1 month, and they call me, Dr. Malik, we've not seen you at once, I say, don't you know they stole my car? I'm not in this frame of mind to be attending to patients for 1 month. So if it is causing so much distress that it's affecting your ability to function and do normal your productivity, those 3 things, severity, lasting continuously for several weeks, causing distress and affecting your day-to-day functioning, then it becomes a cause for concern. So, and if you are not sure, please see a professional so that who will evaluate you professionally and make the right diagnosis. Yes. So if you are in doubt, it's better to err on the side of safety. Instead of assuming that nothing is wrong with me, it's just normal, it's better to see a professional. Because if something is abnormal or going wrong, then they can start treatment. So you can get back on your feet as quickly as possible and return to normal, productive functioning.
I've seen people describe that feeling of emptiness. I feel empty. I don't feel like anything is happening around me. And it gets so bad that they get to a point where they start to have suicidal feelings.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So is that depression as well?
Right. No, in fact, we categorize depression as mild, moderate, and severe.
Okay.
Once, depending on the severity of symptoms, once you start having suicidal thoughts, it's automatically severe depression. It's not even a matter of it is now depression. It is automatically severe depression. We talk about severe depression when the symptoms are many and the severity is high, plus presence of suicidal thoughts, plus presence of psychotic symptoms. What that means is they start hearing voices, or they start having abnormal beliefs that, oh, I'm worthless, I'm useless, everybody hates me, I'm not good enough. Abnormal beliefs that are irrational and which they hold strongly. So we say it's delusional. So once they start having negative delusions, they start having suicidal thoughts, and the symptoms are many and severe, it is automatically severe depression. And I want to plead with our viewers that once you know someone who is beginning to say, maybe you'll all be better off if I die, maybe I just want to sleep and not wake up again, those are red flags. Alarm bells should start ringing. Don't take it with levity. Don't think it's a joke. The reason is because life no gets spare parts. If the person ends up, and this is part of response to one of the earlier questions you mentioned that we'll still talk about the common mental health problems, because increasingly, especially among young people, suicide and suicidal behaviors is one of the really, really big challenges we have today. And it's not just in Nigeria, it's all over the world.
And what's responsible for that?
Right, thank you. It's not one single thing, it's a combination of many factors. So some of those factors include the fact that increasingly where the family unit, the cohesiveness of the family unit is increasingly lost. 3 decades ago, 4 decades ago, most families will have family members, cousins, communal living. You go to the next door to go and play with your friends there. You can eat there and so on. But now everybody has a high fortress. You don't even know who your neighbors are or who their children are. Your children cannot go there. They cannot come to your house.
Are you saying the level of individuality?
Yes, it has become so high that we are losing the communal cohesiveness. And so, in fact, one of the articles I wrote in my Tribune article, I think last year, is the epidemic of loneliness. That we live in a world today where some people have 5,000 friends on Facebook, 1 million followers on Instagram, but in their personal life, they are really so lonely. They don't have anybody they can call at a moment's notice that will show up on their front door if they have a problem. So it's a combination of factors, most important of which is the fact that we are losing the communal cohesiveness, the social support structure, which was universally present to varying degrees based on different cultures and so on. So now you can have someone who has 1,000 friends on Instagram, 5,000 friends on Facebook, but in real life, if they are in danger and you ask them, give them the phone and say, call 2 people who will show up on your door now if you tell them you need them, there is no such person. They don't have that intimate, close relationship with anybody. And so we have an epidemic of loneliness. And young people are especially bearing the brunt because their parents are outsourcing parenting. Daddy is hustling, mommy is hustling.
And they're sheltered.
And the children are left to their devices, their iPads and the gaming devices and the video games and so on.
So you mean the content they see on social media can affect their mental state?
The content, but they are also losing social interactions with human beings, friendship, people who can have their back, who can notice that, the way your face is today is like, what's the problem? Why are you upset?
Did you sleep well?
Did you sleep well? Is anything bothering you? How was school today? You know, these things that will give them an opportunity to ventilate and share and get somebody to rub their head and say, oh, yeah, well,
which of course they can't do with their device.
Of course they can't do with their device. If they just say, oh, I'm feeling upset on Facebook, some people will say, what's wrong with you? Why are you feeling upset? You have this.
And we have trolls that can even say, go die.
Exactly.
Go
some people
yourself.
will even start canceling you and say, oh, you fat, ugly, kind of negative comments that will even make them feel worse. So that is one major risk factor. So we have a lot of loneliness. The other risk factor is peer pressure. Peer pressure, which is amplified by social media. So we are doing this interview here now. Let's assume I go to the best location and then I take a picture and say, oh, chopping the life of my head. And people say, this Dr. Malik is enjoying it. Tomorrow I go somewhere else, I take a picture. I didn't even buy water, nothing, but just pictures and so on. And maybe I know someone who has a private jet. I say, when you are traveling next time, please let me just escort you. And then I take a picture on private and say, this guy is really enjoying. But it's not true. So people who are supposed to be my contemporaries will now say, what's Dr. Malik's secret? Hey, this guy is enjoying, and then they start feeling bad about their own life. Meanwhile, they don't know that it's just make-believe. It's just paparazzi, as they would say. So, but young people especially are much more vulnerable to this kind of oppression, in quote, and they want to keep up with the Joneses. And so they put themselves under a lot of pressure, and no matter what they have, they feel it's not good enough, which makes them predisposed to low self-esteem, to depression. And the other major factor is that over the years, there is what we call in psychology resilience and vulnerability. Resilience is your ability to overcome adversity, to bounce back after challenges. So it's like you have 2 balls. One ball is plastic, the other ball is glass. So if you throw the plastic ball against a brick wall, throw it, it will bounce back. The wall will not spoil. The ball will not spoil. Keep throwing it until you are tired. Nothing will happen. That's resilience, the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. But take the second ball that is glass and hit it against the wall, it will shatter. That is vulnerability. So human beings, all of us, we have resilience to certain things. We have vulnerability.
And we have our limits.
We have our limits. But increasingly, we are seeing that the level of resilience is dropping by the ages. And so generationally, resilience is dropping. And so someone previously, it wasn't uncommon when we were entering the university that some people have written JAMB 3 times or 4 times before they eventually succeeded. But now you find someone who wrote JAMB once, didn't get admission, and he was thinking of suicide. And then he may even go and attempt it. Someone toasted a young girl and she said no, he wants to go and kill himself. Or a girl likes a boy who is not interested in her, she wants to go and try and kill herself. So the level of resilience, or you fail an exam, or every day, remember, definition of mental health, say, fulfill your potential, cope with normal stress. These are supposedly normal stress that everybody will encounter. But their ability to cope is what is the problem. And so these are the reasons why many young people, also because there is a rise in drug abuse. So when you are drunk or you are intoxicated or you are high, your decision making and judgment becomes poor. And so these are the many reasons acting together that has made suicide and suicidal behaviors very common in our society today. Not just in Nigeria, but even across the world. So indeed, WHO says suicide now is the second leading cause of death among young people after accidents and violence. And they are very violent and involved in accidents because they are overspeeding. They can make a bet that, I can drive to Lagos and get there in 40 minutes. The friend will say it's a lie. Say, I enter the car, let's go. Then they now start speeding. So because of those kind of impulsive, risky-taking behavior of young people, accidents and violence are the commonest cause of death, followed by suicide. In fact, let me just quickly add this. The WHO estimates that 1 million people die from suicide every year. And we know that in Nigeria and most of Africa, we don't have all the statistics. Many people will die, they will just go and bury them. Exactly. No reporting. So this 1 million is a gross underestimate. But if you break down this 1 million, what it translates into is that every 40 seconds, a human being somewhere on this planet has intentionally killed himself or herself every 40 seconds.
And people don't talk about it.
It's hush, hush, hush. Don't let people hear. You just quietly go and bury their dead because of stigma, because of shame. And so, unfortunately, many more will not be helped before they get to that point where they also think that they should kill themselves. And then they go ahead, because it's very important to know that suicide is preventable.
I was going to come to that, doctor.
It's preventable. 80 to 90% of suicide deaths have a background mental disorder, especially depression. So depression is like a veil. You were mentioning earlier that someone will say, I've gotten to the point where I just want to die, right? So depression is like a veil which covers the way they look at themselves and the way they look at life, and they start thinking that everything in my life is gloomy. Everything in my life is not good. I'm not good. Everybody thinks I'm a failure. So that perception makes them feel, so if I'm not good and everybody thinks I'm a failure and I'm not good enough, then why am I alive?
Am I still here?
In fact, I'm an embarrassment to my family. Let me just sleep and never wake up again, so that everybody will even be relieved that I'm no longer there. That's the way they begin to rationalize, and that's what makes them begin to go along the steps of suicide. But if we identify the depression and we treat it, then we will lift that veil, and then they will be able to see life clearly in its true colors. We are not saying your life will be perfect, but you will see the good, the bad, and the ugly, instead of focusing only on the ugly and thinking that is the totality of your life. So depression is treatable. Most mental health problems are treatable. So if we can identify people who are depressed ahead, early enough, and start them on treatment, we will significantly reduce the number of people who are becoming suicidal. So that's the way to go.
Thank you so much. I really want to quickly touch on that. For me, I know that social media technology has a great impact on our mental health.
True.
And if you're not very careful, or if you're not strong enough, it could, affect you negatively or positively. So you really have to know how to use, all these devices, phones, laptops, and all these social media platforms. I remember some years back I used to write. I started writing. It started as a hobby at first, and then eventually I realized that people would read, they would comment and all of that. And then at some point, it was more of how many likes do I have? So I post on Instagram, I rush back to check how many likes do I have? How many comments do I have? Have people started dropping their opinions? This and that, And at some point, because the likes weren't coming in as much as I wanted, it started to affect me mentally.
Right.
I won't lie about that. And, I remember having that conversation with my sister, and she said to me, "Are you seeking people's validation?" And a friend of mine also said to me, he said, "Kike, there are people who would read and not even press the like button."
Absolutely.
So you shouldn't even bother yourself. If this is what you love to do, just go ahead and do it. And that did it for me.
Right.
But how many people would have, just like you said, some people would just walk into a nice, lovely, fancy restaurant, take a picture, post it on Instagram, and then several other people will start to think, "Oh, my life is not as beautiful, it's not as, glamorous as this person's life is." And of course, we're supposed to be age mates, we went to school together and all of that. So I understand that perfectly. Now the societal part of it is so worrisome. And I know that is on the rise. Even before you mentioned it, doctor, I want to ask, aside social media, technology, are there environmental factors that contribute to suicide and suicidal behaviors in teenagers and children? For children, I'm so bothered because I would want to ask, what are the life situations that they have been through? Or is it hereditary as well? Because we haven't even spoken about that. We've only talked about the environment, the things they take in, the contents and all of that. Is mental health hereditary?
Right. So thank you very much. Let me start by saying that mental health challenges occur across the lifespan. Children can have mental health problems. Examples include autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. They can have intellectual disability where their IQ is not as high as it should be, and so on. So there are conditions that are specific to children. It starts in childhood. Of course, they may now live their whole life with it, but usually it becomes apparent that there's a problem while they are children. So that's there. There are some that become prominent during adolescence and early adulthood, like depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, between the ages of 15 and 25. That's when it starts for the first time. And there are others that are specific to women. For instance, when women are pregnant, when they just deliver, postpartum depression, because of the hormonal changes in the body of the woman during that phase of pregnancy and after delivery. And then as we grow older into old age, there is also dementia, where the brain becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, and memory, they become very forgetful, they start behaving abnormally and all of that. So across the lifespan, from childhood through adulthood into old age, we can have mental health issues at any time in life. For children, some of the reasons, apart from social media and so on, is environmental. And environmental, which is again still going back to social media, because we now live in a global village. You cannot be bringing up your child in Ibadan and say the child doesn't know what's going on in Japan, what's going on in America. It's a lie. They are watching TikTok, they are watching Instagram, they are seeing children from other cultures, and they are seeing what's going on in their life, and they want to start imitating. So the culture is no longer Ibadan culture. It's now global culture based on what they have access to. And those cultures, there are some cultures where it is very strong that if you've done something that can bring shame and embarrassment, it's better for you to go and kill yourself. Especially in Asia, in Japan, we call it honor killing, Afghanistan, and so on. That if you've done something, rather than bring embarrassment and shame to yourself or to your family, it's more honorable for you to go and kill yourself. So those are cultural values that are now spreading such that someone feels, I failed an exam, my parents are going to be disappointed, let me kill myself. Which parent would prefer to lose a child rather than have you repeat an exam? None, but it's the misconception that the child has that makes them think that way. And with respect to the genetics of mental illness, whether it runs in families, the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
How do I mean?
Yes,
The yes is that if both my parents have mental illness for now, for instance, it means that I have a higher risk of developing mental illness, but it's not automatic. It's not compulsory that because my parents had depression, for instance, I must also become depressed. If your parents don't have it, then my risk is higher than yours, right? But if you, for instance, are having a very unhappy marriage, a difficult career, and so on, you may be so stressed that you can become depressed even though your parents didn't have it. While my parents had it, but if I don't have any risk factor, I have a stable family life, I have a stable job that is not too stressful, I may live up to 100 and not develop depression. So the way I would like us to really look at it is that let us look at it the same way we look at hypertension and diabetes. They are just like mental illness in terms of genetic risk. So if my parents have hypertension, but I can live up to 100 years and not develop it. If your parents don't have hypertension, you can develop it if you have the challenges and so on. So the same way diabetes and hypertension can increase your family risk, but it's just risk, it's not automatic. That's the same way mental illness, when it's present in the family, increases the risk, but it's not automatic. So that's why I say it's a yes as well as a no. So it's not automatic because, again, the major problem is most people, they stigmatize people. Oh, don't marry this person, he's been depressed before. Don't marry into their family. Someone there has had dementia, which is really very silly. Because anybody, as long as you have a heart, you can have a heart problem. You have eyes, you can have eye problem. You have a brain, and except you are saying that you don't have a brain. If you have a brain, you can have a mental health challenge at any point in time. So it's silly to say, oh, this person has a mental health problem, so I will not talk to this person. What if it's you tomorrow that develops depression, or you grow old enough and you have dementia?
I think the stigma.
Absolutely.
The stigma is the main issue we have in our society, and it prevents a lot of people dealing with mental health issues from seeking help in the appropriate places. Even family members will shield them.
True.
I want to ask, Doctor, very quickly, is mental health spiritual? Because I know a lot of people who would rather go the spiritual way, and they will tell you for a fact that it's spiritual, it has nothing to do with medical. Is it spiritual?
Right. The answer is no. Because the way the brain works, the brain uses electricity and it uses chemicals. There are chemicals in the brain that controls our mood, our intelligence, our thinking, our behavior. When the level of these chemicals go haywire, that is when our behavior will change, our thinking will change, our mood will. In depression, there are feel-good chemicals whose levels are too low when we are depressed. There are chemicals that are excessive when someone has psychosis and is irrational and delusional and so on. And we understand how these processes work in the brain. And we have medications that correct these imbalances and they get well. So I can tell you for a fact that even if you pick someone roaming the streets for years, naked, mentally ill, take such a person to the hospital and let us start treating the person. In 2-3 weeks, you will not recognize the person again. He will get well. He or she will get well. In fact, I'm talking about the shame. That's part of what we do at Asido Foundation. That the society, our people perish for lack of knowledge. The shame and the stigma are the biggest barriers
Yes.
So people don't want to come forward so that they will not say, this person has depression, this person has that one. And that is why many people are hiding and suffering in silence. So what we do at the Asido Foundation is to promote awareness, shed light, and let's say, look, it's just like having hypertension or diabetes. It can be treated and you'll be fine. If I have hypertension, I will not be ashamed to tell you.
Tell me, of course, and you'll be on medication.
Exactly. If I have a fracture, everybody will see the POP. What happened to your hand? I fell down, I had a fracture. Everybody will say, yeah, Bele, sorry. You get a lot of sympathy. But if I tell you, oh, I have depression, oh, I had bipolar disorder, you mean, do you get the point? And immediately even you start feeling bad. So both the person affected and the families share the shame and stigma, which is totally unnecessary. So the Asido Foundation tries to create awareness through the newspaper articles, through our programs, through social media, to create because when people know better, they will do better. And I'll give 2 examples. In this same Nigeria, there was a time we were killing twins as evil children before a certain Mary's lesson.
Yes.
Now we know better. Nobody is killing twins again. When we didn't understand sickle cell disease, we were talking of Ogbanje and Abiku. Now that we know, nobody is talking of Ogbanje again or Abiku. So for us at Asido Foundation, we hope that we will get to a stage where people will have better understanding of mental health. HIV too was very stigmatized when it first came. Now we know that HIV, if you are taking treatment, you will not die of HIV. You will live your normal life. And so the shame has reduced. So we are hoping that for mental health, everybody watching and listening this will all, and you are also doing your bit by asking us to come and talk about mental health and coming out from the shadows, which is the real message that we need to come out from the shadows, have better so we can support people who have mental health challenges. We can encourage them, we can show them love, affection, empathy, because it could be me tomorrow, it could be you, it could be the listener. So it's not by our power that you are not depressed now or that you are not having any mental health challenge, and you can't predict that tomorrow it won't come your way. So if you now see someone having those challenges, we should not discriminate against them. We should not stigmatize them. We should rather support and encourage them. Say, are you taking your drugs? Hope you are getting treatment. Very good. Please keep it up. And that way they can return to normal, productive function. So it's not a spiritual problem. It's a medical problem caused by abnormalities in the chemicals in the brain. Right, and with treatment, it corrects it and they get it. Just like diabetes is caused by a chemical called insulin not working well or not being produced in sufficient quantity by the body, and the person is diabetic. And so we treat people with diabetes. In severe cases, they have to be getting insulin injection every day. And once they are getting that treatment, they are fine. Their blood sugar is well controlled. Mental illness is exactly like that.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Very quickly and lastly, I'm going to ask you 2 questions at once. Okay, so first and foremost, Doctor, I've seen people with, mental ailments placed on medication, start the medication, and after a while, not even a lot of them, let me put it that way. And after a while, they stop using their medication, and they are always complaining about the medication. Making them, either too sluggish or, sleepy all the time or gaining weight and all of that. And so they stop. And to get them back on the medication becomes a big
task
issue. That's number 1. I also want to ask, do we have people who have suffered mental health in the past, who are on medication, who are living fine now? Who are living fine and functioning well as long as they are on medication?
Absolutely. Let me start from the second one. Absolutely. And just that confidentiality will not allow us mention names and so on. But there are successful professors, medical doctors, engineers, lawyers with mental health challenge who are, in fact, a former president of Norway came out to say that she had depression at some point and she recovered and so on. So there are many celebrities, many successful, Albert Einstein, right? So many Beethoven, so many famous people who had mental health challenges through their life but they ended up still having very exceptionally successful careers. So absolutely, we have people who are having a mental health diagnosis and have gone ahead and are living very normal, productive, functional, high functioning lives, all over the world. So that's a certain. We just can't mention names because
yes.
of confidentiality. But there are some, so you can Google it, there are some who have come up openly to talk about their challenges. And so even in Nigeria, including people who have held political positions, some of whose cases have already been in the public domain, so, and they've gone on to live very successful lives and careers. So that is indisputable, that is sure. The first question about side effects, let me quickly say that there is nothing in this life that does not have side effects. If you eat too much food, problem. If you don't eat enough food, problem. Everything has, even paracetamol. If you look at paracetamol and you read the side effects, they say it can cause liver failure, it can cause so many things. But the reality is that all of us as human beings, the way we metabolize drugs is different. For instance, chloroquine, that was the mainstay for treating malaria when we were younger. Some people will itch severely to chloroquine. Some other people, they will not itch because our bodies are different. So we have different types of medications for treating mental health issues. The older medications have more side effects of weight gain, sluggishness, and so on. We have newer classes of medications, a bit more expensive, but without those side effects. And then one person A may do well on one drug, person B may not do well on it. The important thing for them to understand is you need to work closely with your doctor so that if you're having any side effect, your doctor can change the drug, adjust the dose to get the balance that will work perfectly for you. Because you can have 10 people with hypertension and the 10 people are on different drugs for their hypertension, because what works for A may not work for B. What works for B may not work for C or D. And even if they are on the same drugs, it may be different doses. Some antihypertensive drugs make people urinate frequently. Some people don't like it. Some may affect their sleep.
Doctor, very quickly, I would like you to touch on insight. Insight. I know that is very, very key in treating somebody living with mental illness. They need to get to the point of insight, because if they don't get to the point of insight, there's really nothing the doctor can do. And I also want you to touch on phone anxiety. That I recently got to know. I mean, I called a friend, she wasn't picking, and I felt a bit offended. And then she sends me a text to say, please send a message here, I cannot pick. I thought that was odd until she explained to me. So what is that a mental disorder as well? Just very quickly before we round up.
So just talking about insight, you're absolutely spot on that insight is when the individual understands that he or she has a problem, a health problem, and that this health problem is of a mental nature. And that's just 50% of insight. The remaining 50% of insight is understanding that they will benefit from treatment, and that if they don't have treatment, they are going to suffer relapses and negative consequences. So that's the full aspect of insight. Most people get tired very easily, let's be honest. Most people with hypertension, with diabetes, taking drugs every day for the rest of their life, sometimes they just get tired. They say, look, I'm tired, I don't want to take drugs again, and so on. But when they understand the consequences, it gives them the motivation to do so. But unfortunately for mental health, when they are ill and they are misbehaving and so on, they cannot see themselves at that time. Except you do a video of how they were misbehaving and all of that, and then you replay it to them.
So they have absolutely no knowledge of what?
Some of them may have some recollection, some may completely not be aware of what happened at that time. So when they are now well, they're not saying, but I'm fine now, so there's nothing wrong with me, I'm recovered. Even if I was sick then, I'm recovered. And so they need to appreciate that for insight, even when you are well, the reason you need to continue taking treatment is to maintain your wellness and to prevent any further breakdown down the line. Just like if you are hypertensive and you say, oh, my BP is well controlled now, I don't want to take drugs again. You stop your drugs, your BP will shoot through the roof and you can have a stroke. You can have a heart attack. So it is to prevent those that you have to continue taking your blood pressure medications, even if your BP is now down. The same thing for diabetes and the same thing for mental. So it's work in progress, but it's the major work that we have to do with our patients to get them to the point where they understand that it is in their own self-interest to continue to take treatment and to continue to see their doctor. So that's
for insight.
Yeah, that's it
then
for
for
insight.
Phone anxiety.
Phone anxiety. Okay, so there are lots of new emotional problems coming up with our gadgets. So some people were now talking of internet addiction, phone addiction and phone anxiety, where the phone rings and their heart skips a beat.
Exactly.
And they are worried, has something gone wrong? So people who naturally have anxiety is worsened now by social media. Every call that comes, they are afraid. Some people are even afraid to open their emails because they are wondering, will there be a negative message? Will something bad happen? And so on. So these are new areas of anxiety coming up associated with our use of phone, use of social media, that it's a new area. So we can't label it as a mental illness, but the fact that it's triggering anxiety, we can deal with the anxiety and teach them how to manage and cope with it.
Anxiety
better.
is a mental illness.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So talk about Anchorage very quickly, then Asido Foundation, then we round up.
Thank you very much. So Asido Foundation is an NGO. The website is www.asidfoundation.com. And we promote awareness. We do a project called Project Hope. We are picking the persons with mental illness.
I've heard about the project.
Right, who are homeless on the streets. We are picking them up from the streets, taking them to UCH and Adeoyo and paying for their treatment. It's a pilot project because we don't have the funds to take everybody at once. And we want to encourage the government to come in here, Ministry of Women and Social Development, and so on, to support us and work with us. We're actually working with them, but we need the government to step in to be able to do more on a broader scale, because these are human beings. The third Sustainable Development Goal says health for all. Health for all means health, physical, mental, and social. And those individuals roaming the streets in Nigeria, they are somebody's son, brother, daughter, sister, and we know for a fact that if they get treatment, they'll get well. So let our society, let our government not turn its back on any citizen. Everybody has a right to health, including mental health. So these are some things we are doing at the Asido Foundation, promoting awareness, and we encourage everybody to support us, join us, follow us on social media, and share our messages so that collectively we improve the awareness of our society. Anchorage is an emotional wellness clinic located at Bodija, Shauna Jagungbade in Bodija, number 32. And for those who want private professional care, that's what the facility is there for. So we provide these facilities for those who may need them. There should be no shame or stigma associated with having a mental health problem. These are very common things present in every society, every family. I will make bold to say every family, because WHO says 1 in every 4 persons. So in a family, you have father, mother, at least 2 children. So there is nobody that can tell me that in my family there's nobody with a mental illness. If you don't know, go and ask, they will tell you, So whether on your mother's side or on your father's side, there's no family without someone. So why then are we stigmatizing and shaming anybody? There should be no need for that. Let us love them. Let us show understanding. Let us encourage them to come forward and take treatment so that together we can have a society that is healthy. Healthy in terms of physical health, most importantly in terms of mental health and social well-being.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jubril Malik, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I hope our viewers have heard it all. We're going to drop Dr. Malik's details on